What's up, everybody? This is Dane Thomas from AroundTheAssociation.com. Happy Memorial Day to all the soldiers out there, either currently serving or have served, and all the ones who have lost loved ones on this Memorial Day. Big shout outs, and it's one of those days where you wanted to thank our veterans, past and present, the ones who are here, the ones who aren't here, for defending our country on this wonderful day. It is Memorial Day Monday. Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals is not until tonight. But last night, the Eastern Conference Finals ended, and LeBron James carried the Cleveland Cavaliers to the NBA Finals once again. They'll be playing on the road on Thursday night in Game 1, as LeBron James is now playing in his 8th consecutive NBA Finals, his 9th in his career, as his Cavaliers over the Celtics 87-79 to reach the NBA Finals. And really, this podcast today really is about the understanding of LeBron James, because every time LeBron James does do something, something magical or extraordinary, we always bring up the fact of Kobe Bryant. We bring up Michael Jordan. That started the second LeBron James stepped in this league, and everything LeBron does is always compared to Michael and always compared to what Kobe is. Jordan, in my generation, being almost 35, was the gold standard, and then, we have the next generation, which is, like I say, I grew up in the late, in the 80s and the 90s, and I saw Jordan as greatest. I remember Jordan playing, when he was in Chicago doing Russell Westbrook numbers, scoring 37 points, 8 rebounds. I remember the 87-88 season where Jordan put 10 triple-doubles up in 11 games. Where Jordan was the first player, I think still the only player in the league's history to be the MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, and also the All-Star Game MVP, all in the same season. Those were wonderful days of Jordan, but the Bulls never won anything. The Bulls never got to the NBA Finals until 1991. Jordan had been in the league 8 years at that point. So Jordan had to learn how to win, because Jordan at his stage of his career was what Russell Westbrook is now, a guy that was a guy that did everything but didn't trust his teammates to to get him to the next level. Now, mind you, Russell Westbrook is a little different story. That's another story for another day. But Jordan's greatness came after he won the championship. After he got to the finals in '91, beat the Lakers. He won 3 championships in a row, retired, went to baseball for almost 2 years, and then he came back, won 3 more championships, retired again, and then he had the stint in Washington where he was just defying the odds, by just doing amazing things in Washington. Remember, he's still the oldest player to score 50 in a game in Washington. And then you look at Kobe Bryant. Bryant came in the league from high school, drafted by my Charlotte Hornets. In the 96 NBA draft, was traded to the Lakers. They signed Shaquille O'Neal a couple years later. Bryant was the youngest kid ever to start in the All-Star game. They won 3 championships. He won 3 championships with Shaquille O'Neal, and the Lakers are one of the most dominant sections of the early part of the 2000s that you're ever going to see. I mean, those remember the days where they destroyed the Sixers. They beat up the Celtics, destroyed the Sixers. Obliterated the Nets, and handed the Pacers one of the finals. Kobe went through after they traded Shaq to Miami. Kobe went through a few years where he couldn't win anything. The Lakers were being bounced to the first round of the playoffs, for those who forget. And then Bryant almost was traded to Chicago, and was interested in going to Detroit at one point. And then a few years later, the Lakers make a trade. They end up getting Pau Gasol. They added Lamar Odom. And the rest is history. They got back to the finals a couple more years. Kobe won 2 more championships. And, people still talk about this day, the whole Chris Paul fiasco, where, the Chris Paul trade was vetoed, and Lakers fans still to this day think they could have won 7 more championships with Chris Paul and Kobe Bryant together. Well, at the same time as Kobe Bryant was doing what he was doing best, LeBron James came to the league, the guy who was nicknamed the Chosen One from the day he was in Sports Illustrated at the 9th grade. James came in with the most unreal expectations of any high schooler in the history of basketball. No one ever came in with this type of expectations. He was drafted by his hometown Cleveland Cavaliers. He got to the finals early in his career with one of the worst possible teams that could ever make the NBA Finals. They got blown away by the Spurs in the finals, and then LeBron, tried to carry them back. I mean, we remember the Pistons Game 6 where he scored, was it Game 6 or Game 7 in Auburn Hills, where he scored pretty much every point in the fourth quarter in overtime. He willed his team to victory. You remember the shot against Orlando in the playoffs. There's a lot of things that he did the first time around in Cleveland. He left, went to Miami, because they weren't going to win any championships, and nobody was going to sign in Cleveland. Went to Miami, teamed up with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. They promised, not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4, but 5, but all those championships they promised. Then James ended up winning 2 championships in Miami, and then he went back home to Cleveland after they made the finals 4 consecutive years in Cleveland. In Miami, he went back home to Cleveland, and now he's appearing in his fourth finals in Cleveland. He lost the first year. He was he set the bar by coming back from a 3-1 deficit, against the Warriors in the second year. Then last year, they got blown away by the Warriors again, and now they're on pace to potentially play the Warriors or the Rockets again in the finals starting on Thursday. So you look at the legacy of these three guys. And we're saying the greatest player of all time. Now, we're talking about Bill Russell. You talk about Wilt Chamberlain, Oscar Robinson. So those other guys are also on this list too as some of the greatest players of all time. Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Jerry West. Tim Duncan. Those guys. I did say Tim Duncan because Tim Duncan is probably the greatest power forward in the history of basketball. Another discussion for another podcast. But you look at all those guys, but most people nowadays talk about those three: Jordan, Kobe, and LeBron. And what people fail to realize about how the greatness of LeBron James has been is it's longevity. We talk about how Kareem Abdul-Jabbar leads the history of basketball in points scored because he played forever. But Kareem was consistent. He was consistently great all the time. He was an 18, 20 point a game scorer the majority of his entire career because of the skyhook. It was about consistency. You weren't going to stop him. He was getting it even during the later part of his years when he wasn't, running up and down, scoring 20, 25 a game. He was still getting it done because when the Lakers slowed the game down and that skyhook was going, you're done. LeBron has been in this game for 15 years. And it's not been 15 years of bad basketball. LeBron really hasn't had any major injuries. This year, he's played 100 games this year at 34 years old. Kobe's body started breaking down. Remember, Kobe had the injury, the Achilles injury, which he never came back from. His Achilles injury, which he never came back from. So LeBron at 34 is putting up numbers that are just insane. But the greatness of LeBron James is not, to me, not estimated in championships because we all debate everything on championships. LeBron's got 3. He's been to the finals 9 times. Now, we don't discount how great Jerry West was, and Jerry West only won 1 championship. And he went to the finals, I think, the same many times LeBron James has. We talk about Jordan being 6-0. That's great. Jordan didn't go 6 straight years in a row. Remember, Jordan took 2 years off. We're not talking about, the guy who's done it consistently. It's all about consistency. LeBron has won 8 straight Eastern Conference finals. If you want to put it in perspective, he's won 24 straight series against the Eastern Conference. That's unheard of. Nobody has done that since the days of the Celtics back in the 60s with Russell. We talk about how great Bill Russell was, and people mentioned how the Celtics team was a 4 seed as saw online, but that team had 6 Hall of Famers in that team. When Russell played, he had 6 Hall of Famers, 6, 5, 6, 7 Hall of Famers on his team. Even Jordan in his championship years, he had one of the top 25 greatest players in the history of basketball, Scottie Pippen, a definite all-time top 10 defender, and you want to see how great Scottie Pippen was. He was just underrated compared to the fact that he played next to Jordan. You want to mention how great Kobe Bryant was. Kobe had Shaquille O'Neal beside him. And Shaq is no slouch. Shaq is one of the 10 greatest players of all time. And arguably, outside of Wilt Chamberlain, the most dominant big man in the history of basketball. Outside of Wilt Chamberlain. There is nobody who is physically endearing more than Shaquille O'Neal. The game is easier when you have such a dominant big guy. The only reason why they win more championships is because Kobe and Shaq's ego got in the way. If they had played with the same type of passion and not so much of an ego, they would have won maybe 6 straight championships because nobody could have stopped either one. Shaq wearing you down for 3 quarters and Kobe finishing you off in the 4th. Jordan had Pippen. But if you look at LeBron James over the years, yes, in Miami he had Dwayne Wade. Wade's going to be a Hall of Famer. Bosh, compared to basketball terms, is going to be a Hall of Famer. But if you look at his time in Cleveland, Kevin Love has been solid. He's an all-star. But is he an all-time great? He wasn't. And I don't think he has some great numbers in Minnesota for a team that never made the playoffs. But is he an all-time great? No. The only time James had an all-time great beside him was in Miami. He had all-time great, in Dwayne Wade. He had all-time great front office guy and leader in Pat Riley, and who has handpicked head coach in Eric Spoelstra. But if you look at his time in Cleveland, he's never had a Hall of Famer beside him. Like I said, Kevin Love is one of those guys that's going to be the borderline. We'll see how his career ends up. But when you look at James's overall performance, LeBron James is the only player in history of basketball to have 31,000 points, over 8,000 rebounds, over 8,000 assists. Some people call it stat padding. I call it consistency. James has basically not had a season-ending injury or a time where he's missed a lot of time. Yes, we've criticized him for the times he took off and took games off and so on and so forth. But hey, when you're playing as many games as he has, 8 straight years of getting to the finals, over 90 games a year, You're playing basketball from September, well, now September, but you're going back to October through June every single year because your team is getting into June. LeBron does need some time off. He needs a day off or two. It happens. It's like baseball. You think how many guys in baseball play 162 games? It doesn't happen every day. It's a physically demanding sport, and for what James has done, and he hasn't had one of those years where he slacked off. James has three. James has got 3 MVPs. He's one of the most consistent players in the league, and sometimes he could have won more MVPs. The same way we talk about how Kobe could have won more MVPs if it wouldn't been for certain situations. People still blame talk about the Steve Nash MVP year the first time around. But when you look at what James has done with the talent he's had around him, he's never had a Hall of Fame coach. I mean, Spoelstra's a great coach, but is he a Hall of Fame coach? Not really. I mean, he had Mike Brown in Cleveland the first time around, Tyronn Lue this time around. He carried David Blatt to the finals. So he didn't have the Hall of Fame coaching of Phil, what Kobe and Jordan did. He didn't have that Hall of Fame coaching. He didn't. Jackson was a Hall of Famer because of Jordan and the triangle. He extended on to Kobe, and of course, it didn't get past Kobe because it didn't work well in New York. But what I'm saying is the greatness of LeBron James is not going to be appreciated now. It's going to be appreciated in the future. What James has done for the NBA in his 15 years has been remarkable. It's the model of consistency. He's coming from high school with the biggest expectations in the history of basketball. And in an age where social media and everything is so accessible, for him to to sustain this type of level every single year is almost damn near remarkable. Is he the greatest player in the history of the NBA? I can't answer that question right now. He's still playing. What happens if he wins a championship this year? What happens if he wins next year? That puts him at 5. And that means he's 1 ring behind Jordan, who had 6. If he won 2 more championships if he got to the championship the next 2 years, that means LeBron will be in the finals for a decade straight. We haven't seen that since Bill Russell and the Celtics in the 60s. Jordan never made 10 consecutive finals. Jordan only been to the finals 6 times. Kobe's been to the finals, 7? LeBron if he gets to the finals the next 2 years, that'll be 10 straight years. Like Will Smith said in his song, if you want to compare summers, look at all the summers Will Smith has had. Look how many summers LeBron James has played into. On top of that, he's going to be playing in the Olympics probably next summer. He's going to be getting ready for Team USA for the Olympics. This man is pretty much Iron Man. And when you look at the greatness of LeBron James, it's more than numbers. It's impact. Look at how many teammates he's had. The Cleveland Cavaliers flipped their entire roster in the middle of the season. Yes, they added better talent, but right now, the talent is not matching what he's doing. He single-handedly carried the team to the finals last night. Jeff Green hit some amazing shots last night, and he played some of the best basketball he's played in his career. I mean, he's carrying a team with Tristan Thompson, has been pretty much in and out of the lineup the entire season. His all-star running mate is out with a concussion. J.R. Smith only hits shots 2 days a week. And the bench hasn't done anything. Rodney Hood refuses to go into games and still hasn't found the rotation. Jordan Clarkson's been sometimey, and they've gotten some production out of Larry Nance. And the only other consistent player on the bench is Kyle Korver, and he's a shooter. So if his shots aren't going in, guess what? There's not much you're going to do. George Hill has been solid defensively, and he's had a few offensive moments. But let's be honest. George Hill averaged less than 6 points a game in Boston, in any game in Boston in that series. He played better at home. I guess he couldn't find Chipotle. But back to James and his greatness. If you just look at all the numbers all the way through, it's been a model of consistency. The man's averaging, over his career, 26 points, I think over 7 rebounds, over 8 rebounds, I think almost 7 assists a game for his entire career. The man's more than just a playmaker. He grabs rebounds. He gets his teammates involved. But most importantly, the Cavaliers or the Heat or whatever team he puts on a jersey, they win. We say, oh, he's not a leader. What's 8 straight finals? That's like a leadership right there. Carrying a team that's been hurt, that's leadership right there. Remember, 2 years ago, this team got to the finals and didn't have Kyrie Irving and didn't have Kevin Love in the finals. Did we forget that? LeBron carried a team in the finals that had Sasha Pavlich, Drew Gooden, Daniel Gibson. I can't remember half that roster that he carried to the finals back in Cleveland. Mo Williams, Zydrunas Ilgauskas. The list goes on guys who played on that roster. That was a very poorly constructed roster he carried to the finals. Look at the roster this year. I mean, if you think that Jose Calderon And Ante Zizic and Seti Osman are all-stars. You're nuts. You know, J.R. Smith, like I said before, is a streaky shooter. Tristan Thompson, his head's not been in the game the entire season. Jordan Clarkson and Larry Nance have been sometimey. Rodney Hood can't find anything under the hood. He's left his entire game is still in Utah. Kyle Korver's a shooter. And they're made the finals with this team. You remember, we're going to say they beat Boston without Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward. It wasn't like those two guys were out of the playoff, were in the lineup before the series started. Gordon Hayward played literally 4 minutes, played less than 1/4 of the season. 1 game quarter. So he was gone before this even existed. Kyrie Irving was out since March. It wasn't like these injuries happened yesterday. It's not like Chris Paul's situation where he was hurt for an extended period of time. You know, Chris Paul was playing the first 5 games in the Warriors series. It's not one of those types of injuries. Those guys hadn't even played in the playoffs. Marcus Smart had a busted thumb, but he played through it. So when you want to talk about the greatness of LeBron James, you want to say, they got an easy route to the finals. They didn't. Boston was the same team, and they added Marcus Smart in round 1. It's the fact of the complete dominance, and no one has seen a dominance like this in a long time of a conference. Jordan had it towards the end of his career where the only team to beat Jordan in the playoffs in his decade of the Bulls was Orlando. The only one team beat him in the playoffs. Literally, in the last 9 years, only one team has beaten LeBron James in the playoffs, and that's the Boston Celtics. That's, in the Eastern Conference, that's pretty much remarkable. It's crazy. It's like what Jordan did. You want to compare, Killer Instinct and everything else in between? You can't really compare that because Jordan was a different type of player. And what Jordan did was, Jordan was just phenomenal. But remember, in some cases in the games, we can go back to the Bulls, the Sun series. Game 1 the line, Jordan didn't take the game-winning shot to close the finals out. That was John Paxson in the Sun series. If you want to look back, going back to the Lakers series, John Paxson closed out those big shots in Game 5 against the Lakers. I mean, you look at Steve Kerr in the finals when they won the championship the second time around. He was the one. The only time Jordan actually closed out a game, literally, was the final shot game in Utah in the fluke, when the final shot. If you really want to go technical on this one, Kobe had his share of shots, but really, it was a lot of Shaq doing in those series. I mean, that's just what it was. We can go back to that wonderful playoff series where Shaq hit the game-winning dunk where Kobe had taken him off the dribble and he came back against the Blazers, if you want to go back to clutchness. And LeBron's hit so many clutch shots down the stretch, so you can't really say LeBron's not clutch either. But the most important part of this podcast that you must understand about LeBron James is that LeBron James has been the model of consistency for 15 years. 9 finals appearances in 15 years. That's a 60% rate. Jordan didn't have a 60% rate of making the finals. He only made it 6 times. Kobe made it 7. Name one player other than Bill Russell with a higher conversion rate of making the finals throughout. I'm talking about elite players. We're not talking about Robert Horry. We're not talking about Steve Kerr. We're talking about guys who literally carried a franchise. I want to see, other than Bill Russell, find somebody who has a higher percentage of making the finals. LeBron James has made the finals 60% of his career. So 3 out of every 5 years, LeBron James is in the finals. Just think about that for a second. Check me out on Twitter at NBADT29. Also, around the Association podcast. Subscribe to it on iHeartRadio and as well as Spreaker. I want to hear your thoughts on this because this is a very interesting subject. But I wanted to give a different perspective about it because I can't because the question that's going to come to me at the end is he the greatest of all? Is he the GOAT? Is he going to put the GOAT head on? Is he what Shannon Sharpe is? At this very, very second, I can't answer that question. Ask me that when he retires. Give me a chance to finish enjoying his greatness. Because once we enjoy it and once we see where it ends up, then we can start having the conversation about Jordan. Like Kobe said last night, let's enjoy it. Let's not tear it apart. Let's all enjoy what we're about to watch now. Follow Around the Association on Facebook, aroundassociation.com. I will be on later on tonight talking about the end of the Rockets and Warriors game as well as getting ready for Game 1 of the Finals. Like I said, you should see me in this podcast. Also, I said when you subscribe on Spreaker as well as iHeartRadio, you're going to get a notification saying that I'm on the air. Please, 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 please get your friends and family to enjoy the show. Pass it on to everybody. That's the only way this is going to work. So, for Dan Thomas from aroundassociation.com, I'll catch you guys later. And I'll have another podcast coming soon. Peace.